In 1969, on the set of a movie, an actor named Rick and his stunt double, Cliff, are interviewed by a presenter about how close they are. Despite being partners at work, Cliff and Rick are good friends, and they spend most of their time together, with Cliff now doubling as Rick's driver after he lost his license. After they leave the set, they head over to a bar where Rick meets with a man named Marvin. Marvin is a huge fan of Rick's movies, and after he talks about how much he loves the roles Rick plays, he tells Rick that he's gradually losing his role as a top actor in Hollywood. He helps Rick see a pattern in the kind of roles he has been playing, and how directors are now using him as a bad guy so they can kill off his character and introduce new, vibrant actors. He then offers to help Rick by getting him casted for top roles in the Italian movie industry. Rick thinks about it for a while, but doesn't say anything. He and Cliff soon leave the bar, but as they're outside, Cliff notices that Rick's mood has changed. When he asks what's wrong, Rick says Marvin just told him the truth about how his career is crashing down. Rick also mentions the offer he got, but says he's not interested in going to Italy. Cliff listens to his rant and tries to convince him that there's nothing wrong with it. On their way to Rick's house, Cliff continues to convince him that going to Italy is not as bad as he thinks. However, Rick is not ready to change his mind yet. Suddenly, they have to stop when a group of girls are crossing the road, with one of the girls named Pussycat waving at Cliff. Later on, Rick and Cliff arrive at the house, and as he keeps complaining, they both watch as a popular director named Polanski and his wife, Sharon, drive into the house next door. This excites Rick, who then tells Cliff that he could just be one party away from meeting the hottest director in town and getting to play a top role in his movie. The next day, Cliff picks up Rick from his house, and they head to the set of a new movie together. On getting there, Rick tells his friend to help him fix his TV when he returns home. Cliff then tells Rick to speak to the director of the new movie to see if he can come on board and start working again. However, Rick says it won't be possible because the director knows about what happened on the set of their last movie. Rick then tells Cliff to enjoy his day and come to pick him up later in the evening. With this, Rick heads to his trailer where the director, Sam, comes over to welcome him. As Sam talks about the costume for Rick's new role, Rick doesn't seem happy that a lot will be changing about his look. He tells Sam that he's not sure people will recognize him, but the director says that's exactly what he wants, because he doesn't want Rick to look like the last character he played. Elsewhere, Cliff is on his way back home when he sees Pussycat again. They wave to each other, and she asks if he can give her a lift. However, Cliff signals that he's going in another direction. After a while, he gets to Rick's house and picks up his tools, after which he climbs the roof to fix the TV antenna. While he's working, he remembers what Rick said about the director not wanting him on his project. He then recollects what happened on the last movie set. On that day, Rick begs a director named Randy to allow Cliff to be his stuntman in the movie. But Randy doesn't like the idea because his wife, Janet, is not a fan of Cliff. Despite this, Rick succeeds in convincing the director, and Cliff is hired. However, while on set, Cliff gets tired of hearing the main character, Bruce, talk about how good he is at martial arts. Bruce senses this and dares him into a contest for the first one to put the other one on the ground 3 times. Despite landing Cliff on the ground on his first attempt, Bruce is eventually thrown towards a car, which leaves a huge dent. The car turns out to be for Janet, and since she already has a grudge against him, she asks her husband to chase Cliff off the set, and he does that. Just as he gets back to working on the antenna, Cliff sees a man named Charlie head into the Polanski residence, where Sharon is inside with her friend Jay. Suddenly, Jay sees the man and goes outside to ask if he's lost. Charlie says he's looking for a man named Terry, but Jay says Terry no longer lives there, and it's now the Polanski residence. While Jay explains where Charlie can find who he's looking for, Sharon comes out to see if everything is okay. Jay says everything is fine, and just then, Charlie also leaves. Meanwhile, Rick walks around the set to find somewhere to sit as he prepares for the shoot to start. He sees an empty seat next to a girl named Trudy, who is reading a book. He asks if he can join her, and the girl tells him to sit as long as he won't disturb her. Not long after he sits, he asks her what she's reading, and she tells him it's a biography. She also asks about his book, and he says it's about someone who used to be really good at his job, but is currently no longer the best. As he talks about this, he starts crying, as it makes him remember how his career is turning out, but Trudy consoles him. Later on, Rick meets the lead actor of the movie, James, who says he's happy that someone as good as Rick is playing the bad guy in the movie. He, however, can't help but bring up a lead role Rick lost in the past, and as the actor talks about it, that seems to break Rick's heart. Elsewhere, Sharon is going around the city and stops at a bookshop to get a present for her husband. After she leaves there, she heads to a theater to see a movie she acted in. The ticketer tells her the price to go in, and just as she's about to pay, she suddenly asks if she still needs to pay since she acted in the movie. But the lady doesn't recognize her, and she has to call her manager Ruben. As Sharon introduces herself to Ruben, he also doesn't recognize her, but after a while the manager welcomes her in to watch the movie for free. Before she enters the screening room, the ticketer asks for a picture, and after taking it, Sharon goes in to watch the movie. While watching it, she can't help but look excited as she admires her acting. She also loves how the audience seems to be enjoying the movie. Meanwhile, work starts on the set for the movie Rick is acting in. After a while, as his character is speaking to James, he forgets his lines a couple of times. Rick suddenly gets nervous and decides to walk out because he believes he's doing a bad job. However, Sam convinces him to finish up the scene and correct his mistake. With this, he sits back at the table with James and continues the scene. After the scene, though, Rick goes to his trailer and blames his drinking habit for his poor performance. He also starts smashing things around as he feels embarrassed. Shortly after, he decides to quit drinking so he can do better. During the next scene, Rick does incredibly well, with Trudy also being there. After the scene, Sam praises him for how well he performed, and Trudy also says it was the best acting she has ever seen, leaving Rick really close to tears. Elsewhere, Cliff is driving around town when he sees Pussycat again. This time, he stops to give her a lift, since she says she's going to a ranch, which happens to be one of the sets he and Rick have worked on before. While in the car, she asks what he does, and when he says he's a stuntman, she says it's better than being an actor, though he doesn't really believe it. Just as they arrive at a ranch, a lady named Squeaky, who is in a room with some other people, hears the sound of a car. She tells a girl named Snake to see who it is, and when she sees Cliff and Pussycat, she informs Squeaky. As Pussycat holds Cliff to walk with her, she keeps wondering why there are only a few people around. A woman named Gypsy then comes over to meet them, and Pussycat introduces her to Cliff. Gypsy then mentions that everyone, including their leader Charlie, has left for a trip. Pussycat says she wishes Charlie was around so he could meet Cliff, because she has a feeling he'd like her new friend. As they're talking, Gypsy walks away and tells one of the girls in the community to inform a guy named Tex to come and check out the stranger. Not long after, Tex gets there, and after talking to Cliff for a while, he decides to leave, since the stranger doesn't look like he's going to cause any trouble. However, as Tex leaves, Cliff asks about the owner of the ranch named George. This question seems to get all the ladies nervous. After hearing that George still lives there, Cliff says he needs to say hello to him, but Gypsy tells him not to. Pussycat also says George is likely asleep, but the way they all look nervous makes Cliff curious about what they're hiding. He insists that he's still going to check on George, and as he heads for the house, it turns out to be where Squeaky, Snake, and the others are hiding. Immediately, Snake tells Squeaky that Cliff is headed for the house. She tells all of them to leave so she can handle him. As he reaches the entrance, Cliff sees Snake and the others walk out, with Squeaky then asking what he wants while standing inside the house. He says he's there to see George, but she says he's asleep. Cliff says he still wants to come in, and Squeaky lets him in. As he enters, he sees how the room looks so untidy and heads to where Squeaky says George is sleeping, while she also adds that he's now blind. Cliff finds the room and sees George sleeping. He wakes him up, but the old man doesn't recognize his voice, even when he says who he is. Cliff then says he only wanted to check up on him because of how the ladies were behaving. George says he's fine and he needs to go back to bed before Squeaky gets angry. Cliff tries to find out if they're not taking advantage of him, but George says Squeaky loves him. With this, he heads out and sees Pussycat waiting outside for him. She says he embarrassed her, and he says sorry for that. As he's walking away after telling her he's not sure what they've done to George, she climbs a car and shouts that he's blind. All the other members of the community also start yelling at him, and as he reaches the car, he sees that someone has punctured one of the tires. He looks around and sees a guy named Clem, who happens to be the one who did it. Cliff says the car belongs to his boss, and he's not going to let Clem get him in trouble. He brings out a spare tire and tells Clem to fix it. When he refuses, Cliff beats him up and forces him to do it while the ladies watch. As this happens, Gypsy tells one of the girls to go and get Tex. However, before Tex gets there, Clem has fixed the tire and Cliff has left. From there, Cliff heads over to pick Rick from the set and when they get to his house, Rick invites him to come in and watch the premiere of his new show airing that night. Both men then go in and enjoy the show. 6 months later, Marvin calls Rick and reminds him of the offer he gave him a while ago. Since he's not doing so well, Rick decides to take the job, and he heads to Italy to start making movies. After a while there, Rick becomes really popular and makes some money from the top roles he plays in Italy. He also gets married to a lady named Francesca, and after a couple of months, he decides to head back to the United States with Cliff, who's also with him in Italy. Before their trip, Rick tells Cliff that he can no longer afford to pay him for being around anymore. Cliff says he understands, with both men then agreeing to have fun together for the last time when they arrive in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, Sharon is now pregnant, and she has even prepared a room in the house for her baby. Later that night, she also goes out with Jay and some other friends, after which they head back home together. After arriving in Los Angeles, Rick and Cliff decide to go to a bar, but they have too much to drink and eventually leave in a cab. After arriving at the house, Cliff picks up his dog and goes for a walk. Just as he leaves, Tex drives into the neighborhood with a really old car. The sound of the car's engine is so loud that Rick gets angry and goes outside to complain to him to leave. He looks really pissed as he shouts at Tex and the others in the car. Despite having a gun inside the car and also feeling really bad about the way he's shouting at them, Tex decides against killing Rick and just drives away. After moving slightly away from the neighborhood, Tex tells the ladies in the car that they still have to complete the mission given to them by Charlie. He says Charlie told him to go to Terry's old house and kill everyone there. The ladies are not so sure about it anymore because Rick is still awake, which means other people in the neighborhood might also be awake. However, Tex insists that they do as they were told. Just then, one of the ladies, Katie, recognizes Rick as a movie star. Tex also realizes this, but the other girls, Sadie and Flower Child, are not too familiar with him. Suddenly, Sadie says that most of the movies she watched as a kid were about murders, and since they're now in Hollywood, which is where most actors live, they can kill them all because they're the reason she knows how to kill. Tex and the others are motivated by this, and they get out of the car. As they head over to Rick's house, Flower Child stops and says she forgot her knife in the car. Tex gives her the keys to go and get it, but as they wait for her, she drives the car away and leaves them there. Despite this, Tex tells Katie and Sadie to stay focused on the mission. Meanwhile, Cliff arrives back at Rick's house and starts preparing something for the dog to eat while he is listening to music with headphones in his backyard. Suddenly, Cliff's dog senses Tex and the others arriving at the house. Even though Cliff doesn't understand why his dog is barking at first, he soon realizes it as Tex and the ladies enter the house. Tex points a gun at Cliff and asks if there's anyone else at home. Cliff says it's just one person, and just as Katie checks and sees Francesca, she brings her to the living room. At that moment, Cliff recognizes Tex, and as he's about to shoot, Cliff signals to his dog to attack Tex. While the dog is biting Tex, Sadie charges at Cliff, but he throws a can of dog food at her face, leaving her badly injured. He then tells the dog to move over to her while he finishes off Tex, while Francesca also attacks Katie. However, Francesca runs away before Katie can retaliate. As she then charges at Cliff and stabs him, he beats her up until she dies. Just as Sadie is struggling to get the dog off her body, she's finally able to pick up Tex's gun and start shooting around. After losing a lot of blood, Cliff suddenly falls to the ground while Sadie continues shooting and crashes against a glass leading to the backyard where the pool is. As he hears the glass shatter, Rick finally takes off his headphones and realizes what's happening. While she's still shooting around from inside the pool, Rick quickly runs into the house and returns with a flamethrower, which he uses to burn her alive. He then goes in to check on Francesca and Cliff. Shortly after, the police arrive at the scene, and they take Rick's statement as well as that of Francesca and Cliff, who is now conscious. As Cliff is being taken to the hospital, Rick offers to come with him, but Cliff tells him to go and be with his wife. He then tells Cliff that he's a good friend, and Cliff says he only tries his best. Just then, Jay shows up at the gate of the Polanski residence and asks Rick about what happened. He explains everything, and Jay asks if everyone is okay. Sharon also uses the intercom system at the gate to ask Jay what's happening, and as he tells her, she asks about the actor next door. Rick then answers by himself, saying he's doing okay. As she seems to be a fan of Rick's movies just like Jay, she invites him in to have a drink with her and her other friends.